Hey everyone, Megan from Romance by the Book here with the lovely Marielle.
Hello.
And this is week two for October's book of the month, played by Naima Simone.
That's
Um,
right. We ended
yes.
when they were just about, well, Khalid, the male
Khalil, yeah.
protagonist, Khalil, the male protagonist's son, just talked his way into a visit to the firehouse. So,
Yes, he wants to go to the firehouse. So, picking up here, there's a content warning for sexual harassment at work. Um, it's a bit triggery, so please take care of yourselves. Um, so Adina knows that this can't end well, but she couldn't say no when Solomon called and she could hear his son's excitement in the background and she was like, oh shit. So she agreed that they could come.
yeah, and she's excited. Like she's trying not to be excited, but she's excited.
Yeah. And of course the kid is adorable and totally like steals her heart from the beginning. She brings them inside to meet everybody, and then Malcolm, her brother, comes over to, of course, give Solomon some shit after what they talked about at the dinner before. And then she's like, "Oops, forgot about that whole fake boyfriend thing. Probably should have told my brother about that before he came around again, but like too late now." And so of course he plays along again, with like a hand on the back of her neck, and she is getting worked up, y'all. Like she's like, "Oh, this is not, I have to get away from this right now, right?"
Yeah,
So
I feel
she
like for some people that might be like danger, but she was like, "Oh, let's."
uh-huh. She's like, "Oh, this is not good. I don't need to be turned on right now at work." So she kind of escapes to go find these gifts
We
for the kid.
we should mention that he also shows signs of having a similar reaction.
Yes. He's like, "Why is this working for me right now? Like I should not be
Yeah,
yeah,
she feels
feeling some
a
type of
little
way."
nudge from like because he's kind of behind her and she's like,
She's like, "Oh, he's turned on too."
I'm not gonna think about what I think I'm feeling right now. I was
Yeah,
like, oh
exactly.
no.
So she goes to this like supply closet to find these gifts that they give kids who come to the firehouse
Yeah,
for
it's like the
Khalil.
little plastic like
Hat
firefighter
and a
hat and
badge and a couple other things. Yeah. Um, and so Matt follows her into the supply room,
yeah,
acting like
so
your
she like
typical,
finds the
like,
stuff and then there he is. She was so focused on looking for the things that she didn't
she
really
didn't
even
realize.
like hear him go in,
And he's acting
which to
like
me
your
is so
typical,
creepy.
like, piece of shit dude who's butthurt about being rejected by her. And she's really between a rock and a hard place. And it pisses her off that she has to deal with this, number one, and that she can't really deal with it the way she wants to, because number one, he outranks her. And number two, she's a woman and a black woman at that in this firehouse, and she has to be more cognizant of the optics of that when it comes to complaining about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we get the sense from like her internal like dialogue that she wants to be viewed as like a strong person, and he some of the stuff that he says to her kind of plays into that
Mhm.
of like, like you don't really belong here anyway, like you're only here because your
Because your daddy's
family's
the boss.
here.
Yeah.
And he also mentions that they needed some kind of like diversity quota or something, and so there's a lot that he is saying that kind of reinforces her own insecurities there.
Yes.
But she there are moments in this where she feels unsafe,
Yes.
and she's trying to be like, okay, like she's trying to stand her ground, but he gets angry when she says, when she like snaps back at
Yeah.
him.
Well, and she
And
doesn't. She lets it go until he said he like brings up the name of her fiance who died. Like, did you even love him or were you just like
yeah,
biding time basically? And she's like, "Look, motherfucker. Like, we're not doing this." Like she that is what finally snaps her, and she gives him hell and he gets big mad and she knows she went too far, but she's
but
had it
it's
with
like
him.
she didn't. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking like, you didn't go too far.
No.
This man is just dangerous. And
Yes.
the truth is that even
And he
before
gets
that, like
even nastier than he already
even
was.
before even before that, like anytime she snapped back any kind of response, his reaction was enough for her to be like, "Oh, I need to pull back."
Yep.
Or she didn't want to step so that she was any closer to him
Yep.
physically,
Hmm.
even though they're in a closet. So clearly, like, there's not
And he's
very,
literally blocking the door.
yeah. So
And
when she
so,
tries to leave, he won't move. Like, she's kind of like, get out of the way.
yeah.
And he is
Thank
like,
God her
really,
brother knocks on the door and is like, "Hey, are you good? Like, what's going on?" And immediately Malcolm is sus. He's like, this is fucking sus. Like, what are you doing in there with her? You know?
Uh-huh.
And he's
Well,
like,
he
oh, I
opens the
just,
door to step out, and he's just like, "What is
what is
this?"
this? Yeah. And he can tell by her face that she's not good. And but she's like, no, it's fine, everything's fine. Like she doesn't want to like call attention to it.
The thing that's interesting is that Matt had told her, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna report me, and then what? I'm still gonna be here, like even after you've been given a desk job or you're so obviously he's been playing into her
Her fears
feelings.
about,
And
yeah,
when her brother comes, she's got two things going on. One is that she wants to handle it herself,
yes,
but two, and then she's worried about like his reaction, that he
mhm,
might like be so mad that he
right.
reacts
Well, and I
badly.
almost think there's the third thing there, which is that she feels like her family, especially, but even the other guys in the firehouse, have sort of looked at her as fragile since she lost her fiance. And she can't stand the idea of still seeming that way to him. And now in a different situation, also still seeming that way to him. And she's just like, no, I cannot tell him about this. Like,
Yeah.
and
So
so now she's in a corner.
because he like point blank asks her, and Matt answers like, "Oh no, it's fine," and he's like, "Is it?"
Is it fine? Yeah.
And she lies to his face,
Yep.
which was interesting to me. And this is because I'm on some kick thinking about like themes and things in the book. But like earlier, earlier Solomon tells her something about her being like a little liar or something,
Hmm.
and she's like, "I am not."
Yep.
But here she is
Yep.
in like right in her brother's face, and he obviously knows that something is not right here,
Yes.
and she won't tell him. And it's so interesting because she like wants to, like, she's like, he's gonna put on his Superman cape, and what I need is, like, she's like, I need to be empowered to
Right.
do the thing for myself. But in the end she doesn't do anything.
Yep.
And it's like, for me as a reader, I was like, ah.
Yeah.
But also it seems very realistic about how something like
Yeah.
that would go down.
And also this is the first time that it's escalated. Like he was saying comments and stuff, but she could sort of like blow it off and be like, I don't need to do anything about this. But this is the first time when that she literally felt unsafe with him and she's like, this is escalated. Like now I feel like I need to do something, but what the hell am I gonna do?
Also, she hadn't said anything before, and she has that thought of like, oh,
Right.
now it's going to be, why didn't you
Now
say
it's a whole
something?
thing. Yeah.
And he did, like, we've already seen one other instance. It
Yeah.
was not as like
Not
scary as
as
this
close as
one,
this. Yeah.
but he was being like sexually harassing.
Yes.
And also with, because of their power dynamics in the
Right.
within the job,
Yeah.
it's so like
He's so
sticky,
gross.
such a
Oh.
sticky situation.
Um, so Solomon, it's been like 10 minutes since she left, and he's having a bad feeling, and he's learned to listen to this feeling in his life,
Yeah.
which has happened to him multiple times when indeed bad things were going on. And so he's about to go walk down a hall and find her when Matt comes out, mean mugging, and like walks out of the firehouse. And then Malcolm and Adina come, and he can tell that she like something's going on, but he doesn't know what. And so
Also, Malcolm tries to like do a little like signal, and
mhm.
he's just like, if it was anyone else, I think he was trying to tell me something. And I'm like, he is trying to
Right.
tell
He
you
is trying to tell
something.
you something. Yeah.
Like, but yeah, but he
Um,
thinks that they don't have that kind of relationship,
yeah.
so he
And so they're chatting or whatever, and some of the stuff he says can definitely be construed as flirty, which she's like surprised by, but also like that just seems to be what they fall into every time, so it sort of also isn't surprising. Um, and so then she's out in the fire truck with Khalil, and he's like, honking the horn and doing the thing and like having a blast. And he asks if she can come to the museum with them. And of course, Solomon is like, oh God, and she's like, actually, buddy, I'm working, all day and night. I'm sorry. Like, we have to be here if anybody needs us, like, and,
yeah. I
and
mean, he's very like, can she come to the museum? Oh, also, she could come have dinner and do
right.
pizza. And like, he's clearly had like a really good time with the like station at large,
Yes.
like all the people in there, he's had a
Yeah.
great time, but particularly with her.
Yes.
Like we're told that he like jumped on her back and slid down the pole and sat
Right.
in her lap when they were doing when they were in the truck,
Yeah.
and so it's like clearly he's super comfortable with her.
Yes.
And in the first part of the book, there was like a tiny moment where he says something about how because he feels like his grandma was sad, and he's like, well, we're gonna come back, not like mom. And so it's like you get like tiny glimpses of like, he misses
Yeah.
his mom, and even though Adina's not his mom, it's still like she's a lady and she's fun, and he's
Having happy
obviously
feelings
like
about
having kind
her.
of a bonding
Yeah,
situation there, which
definitely.
Solomon has clocked, and he's not sure how he feels about it. Like he's happy his
Yes.
son is laughing. He's
And she
also
can tell that he's uncomfortable. And so she's like, "Oh no, I gotta work. Sorry, buddy, you know." And she's like, "You can come by anytime," kind of thing to the kid. Um,
he
and
doesn't want to say goodbye, so she says like, "We'll just do see you later." And he's like,
later,
"Oh, you could
yeah.
come to a game." Like he's just like, "Yes,
He's
definitely
trying to
later.
make it so he
Let's make a
definitely sees her
plan
again.
now."
Yes.
He's like my hairdresser. Like, here's the calendar. When's the day?
Yes. And meanwhile, she's like, he didn't know what to say, so he's grateful that she jumped in and said that. But he also, because he knows she's a danger to him, like the way he feels when he's around her and what he wants to do to her, like this is not good for him in his mind. Like this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And so her godfather takes the kid into the house to say goodbye to everybody. And then Matt like slams out of the building and like drives off. And he's like, something is wrong here. Like he senses that there's a problem. And of course he nails it. And he's like, I've got your back, basically, you know, and she's like, nah, you don't even like me. Like, don't act like you give a shit about this, right?
Yeah.
And
The thing that's interesting is that she tries to lie to him too. Like she tries to kind of be like, no,
yeah.
it's nothing.
Hmm.
But he won't let her.
No, because he can
And
see for himself that it is something. And he does apologize for how he reacted after their kiss. And he admits that she's the first woman that he's kissed since his wife. And she's shocked by this because he had already told her that he had slept with people before, but he did not kiss them. Some very like pretty woman shit. And so
yeah,
she's shocked by that, and then she feels bad. She's like, I feel bad that that I asked you to kiss me because clearly that was something that you had not were maybe not ready for either, you know? And he's like, no, nobody can make me do anything I don't want to do, basically. Um, and then he kisses her again. And in her mind, she's like, danger, danger. Like, but
also
neither, and
they're
him
still
too, but neither
outside.
of them
Like
seem to
what in
care.
the world?
Yeah. And so eventually somebody clears their throat, and it's Jared, her godfather, who has the kid with him. And he says, why are you kissing her, Daddy? I thought she wasn't your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And Solomon's like, oh, crap. Rutro.
He was
Uh,
like, I was just saying see you later. And he's like, that's not how you say see you later to my grandparents and
yeah.
other
And so
people.
he like sort of dodges it all by being like, okay, time to go. But he does ask Adina to come to the game. He's like, I know that he already asked you, but like I'm asking you, like I would love it if you were there. And
And in his head, like in his internal like thoughts, he is like, I like all of the things that have led up to this moment should make me not ask her to come. And because if I get near this woman,
things are gonna
likelihood
happen.
is
Yep.
things are going to happen.
Yep.
None of this is enough of a deterrent
Nope.
right now.
He's
And
like, I'll leave the
he,
tickets for you. Like, I want you to come.
yeah,
And so
and
she
he's made a like
reluctantly agrees
conscious choice. So this is the first time where he is like, he is choosing to,
to put himself in the situation where this might happen.
yeah,
So Adina and Noni are at the game. Noni is thrilled. She's a hockey fan, so she's like, yes, she's excited. She kind of gives Adina a pep talk and is about like doing something nice for herself and like letting herself like just think of this like a little treat, like and like take it, like you deserve it,
yeah.
basically,
Well, and
right?
like Khalil had invited her to like sit with him in the like owner's box or whatever with his
Yeah,
grandparents.
Oh, bless you.
Sorry. Pollen. It's pollen. Anyway, yes. And she was like, no thanks. So she's not sitting in any box. Yeah, okay. She's not sitting in any box, but they did get like escorted into these VIP seats, and there's
Right.
like a person who will bring them snacks. And so it's still like, I mean, it's not shabby, even
No,
if
it's
it's not.
nice. Um, so, and she's, she's hearing what her friend is saying, but she's like, in her mind, she's like, it might be safe because he's emotionally unavailable. And like, technically, so am I. Like, but I have to remember that. Like, I can't let myself get wrapped up in like this being anything more than what it would be. And so these two women sit down next to them. And one is Patrice, who's the wife of another player. We saw her earlier in the book. She was like watching Khalil at the practice, like when they were
Yeah,
practicing
and
earlier.
they had revealed like the player that's
Teammate,
a
yeah,
coworker, I guess, yeah, teammate had revealed that they were expecting a baby, but that it
right,
was really soon. They weren't telling anyone
really early,
because
yeah,
they had had a miscarriage or like, you know,
before,
before.
yeah.
So, but she's there with her sister, and
And
she,
they're all fast friends. They're like having a great time together. And so after the game, as she and Noni are about to leave, she hears Khalil yelling her name. And so she turns around and like sees him coming down the stairs. And so she goes over there to hug him. And then he introduces her to his grandparents, which is very awkward.
they are not happy to see her
No, they
at all.
clearly don't approve. And man, it burns a little bit. And Noni, her best friend, who always has her back, she's like, I better get her out of here or she's going to say something rude, right? So she's like, okay, bye. And so,
They're very like they like interrogate her kind of, and
yeah,
she's like, it's not in the like, oh, nice to meet you.
yeah, no, not at all.
It's yeah. So she and this is also like she says it's part of the job, like being able to like
Right.
get a feel for what getting
What
the
the
lay of the
situation
land.
is. Yeah,
And she's just like, oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So after the game, Solomon heads up to the suite to pick up Khalil, and Khalil's like, "Oh, I saw Adina." And then his in-laws and him get into it. Who is this woman to you? Why has she met Khalil? Et cetera, et cetera. And Saul is not having it. Like he
yeah.
basically tells them, like, I love you and I respect you, but you're talking some bullshit right now. Like this is not your business.
Yeah,
And
he actually like moves them away, which is really interesting because I was like, "Ooh, I hope that little boy is not overhearing." And he like
yeah,
moves them away so that he can say what he needs to say.
yeah,
He had been like in the locker room. The other like players had been kind of ribbing him because they had noticed her out there.
yeah,
But by the time he comes out, like she is no longer there,
yeah,
and it's clear that the his in-laws are very much like marking him and Khalil as their territory. They're just like this,
yeah,
and they're being really accusatory of somebody that they've never met before, which it like
yes.
really rubs him the wrong way.
He does not like that at all. So the next day, he calls Adina and she almost doesn't answer because she's kind of like mad about how that all went down. Um, but she does. And he asks her to
Also,
come hang
he
out with
never
him.
called her after.
Right.
Like
He did.
they
Yeah.
looked at each other in the eyes, and then he
At the game.
never
Yeah.
reached out to her after the game. So she's just kind of like,
Don't like it. Yeah. So she does answer and he asks her to come hang out with him. And she's like, why? And he's like, because you want to. And so she's like, ugh, fine. So he sends a car for her, and she's like reluctantly impressed with that and with his home. They eat lunch, and then she says, like, why am I here?
yeah,
And he's like, because I want to spend some time with you. And she says, you mean you want to fuck? And he's like, yeah. And so he goes on about like how gorgeous she is um and she's not running away, but she kind of wants to. She knows that she's going to get hurt here. Like she can foresee that this is not good for her. And he's honest to a fault. Like he still loves his wife. He's got nothing to offer but some friendship and sex. And like if that's what she wants to, then great, kind of a thing. And she wants to make herself leave, but she can't seem to manage it. They finish lunch and they clean up, and she is actually getting ready to leave. And he's like literally calling the driver and about to open the door. And she says, I don't want to go. And so he grabs her and they go upstairs into a
Did
guest.
we mention that he cooked her lunch?
Yeah, oh yeah, he did. He
And
cooked
she had been like, this is perfect. Also, she thought that he might be inviting more people because it was a
because it was
lot
like
of
a lot.
food.
Yeah.
And
Professional
yeah,
athlete.
when he starts saying all this stuff, she's kind of like, can you stop talking until I finish my lunch?
Yeah.
Um, and it is kind of funny because he's like, okay. So when she decides that she doesn't actually want to leave, he's like, why'd you like you could have we could have she's like, I wasn't
Right
sure
now
you
I
were
only
gonna
have
let
an
me
hour and a
bring a
half
to-go
until I got to
bag.
pick my kid up. Yeah. And so, but they go upstairs to a guest room, which is a bit of an ouchie, but is also a good reminder too that this is all this is.
Well, and as they're getting like more intimate and less dressed, like
Yeah.
she's got a necklace that has a pendant and
Mhm.
it belonged
To her fiance.
to her fiance, which, he asks about it and she tells him and he doesn't like it.
Right.
But
She's like, I see a
then,
look on his face for a split second that's like
like,
jealous
she thought
or
he was
like,
gonna walk away, but
yeah,
instead he just like
he
goes and
decides
sits
to
on the
like
bed.
ignore
And
it. Yeah.
so it's an interesting because the scene is like it's hot, but at
Yeah.
the same time, there's moments where you're like, oh, these people are still like dealing
They're
with
kidding themselves about what this is. And also, though, they're both still dealing with like big feelings about their past. So,
and about
yes.
each other. Like they don't
Yeah.
want to because yeah, he's very like this isn't anything, but okay.
But yeah. So, of course, they have sex. It is dirty and it is very hot. That mouth on that man. So, but now they're at McDonald's while Khalil plays on the playground and Solomon is contemplating, like, how did I end up here? Like, I should have just sent her home. Like, why is she here? Like, why did I put myself in this
Why
situation?
did I
Right.
invite her to
Yes.
come here with me?
And it's not what he expected. And as much as he's come to like her and how much his son likes her, like he could never be with her for real because her job is too dangerous. And after what he's been through, like there's no way that he can handle that. Like he's like, that would never work for me. Like this is a problem, right?
He says that there would always be like a chance that something terrible would happen. It's
Yeah,
like I don't think earlier they fully like explained what happened with his wife, but it was an accident,
it was a
and so
car
she
accident.
just
Yeah,
never came home one day. And he's like, so he knows that there's like always a chance that something
right.
could happen out of the blue, but also he's like,
Don't want to add anything
but
to
this
that.
lady runs into burning
Yes.
buildings.
Like
She's
this is a
running
problem for
into
me.
these situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she mentions that she met his in-laws and they clearly didn't care for her. And he's like, honestly, don't take it personally. Like he's their only grandkid. They're very protective, etc. He talks a bit about his own parents and growing up in Canada. Um, and then he kind of realizes he's like, I owe you an apology and it's overdue. Like the way I talked to you the first day we met was not okay. Like yes, you did a thing that was also not okay, but like how I reacted to it was not acceptable and I'm sorry. And he does tell her that when she said that word abusive, it really stopped him cold because he watched his mother live through a couple of abusive relationships after his dad died, and he swore that he would never be that way with a woman or his kid or anybody, and he hates that he made her feel like that.
Yeah.
Um, and he's never really talked about this to anybody except Kendra, his wife. So that's already making her different than, anybody else,
I mean, she was
basically.
already different because he like knew her name,
Yeah.
like
And
met her
actually gave a
parents.
crap about her. Yeah.
But
Um,
like the more that they spend time together, the more that he is doing things with her and crossing lines feels like the wrong expression, but kind of
yeah.
crossing lines that he's only ever done with his wife
And
before.
he's
So it's
trying to
interesting.
act like that doesn't make this something, but it clearly
Yeah.
does. And I wrote in my notes, good luck with that, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, because he'll
Um,
do the thing, and then in his head, he's like, "But good thing this isn't anything." And you're like,
yeah.
"Okay,
And he also notices how much he's been laughing and like having fun with her, which is more than he's done in 2 years. And he's
yeah,
like, nope, not reading anything into that either. Okay, moving on. And
yeah,
that's pretty much the end of chapter 13. So, lots of denial happening here. But they have finally been together, and we're clearly going to see where that goes. So, we will see
yeah."
you next week.
See you next week.